So, all right, what was said this morning was done in a way to very gently reach the attention of us, the real of us, and it was done very simply by addressing the real of us, the honest of us, the heart of us. Over here you will notice I've divided the board. The whole world would appear to be divided. All tangibility has its division. All organization has its division. Everything is divided against itself, it would seem. The one side over here marked I is the intellect. And all spoken words are addressed to the intellect. And because words are made by people, words are supposed to make sense. And therefore, they are addressed precisely to the intellect of us, and the more precisely they're addressed, the Greek philosophers would say the more reason and logic that are behind the statements, to support the statements, the better it is, because then I will understand. But now, as any story is told, and as any memory comes to mind about husband or family or children or youth or age or anything, with that memory always comes with it a feeling, albeit not necessarily good, but a feeling, which is intangible. At least it would be extremely difficult to put into words. Very often with a spoken story, as you heard 20 at least this morning. With those stories often come an inner melody, an inner song that has direct bearing. And that song, of course, is tied directly to what would appear to be our accumulated experience, our memories. To some, apparently, to some, I say apparently for good reason, because I can only be certain of the experience of one awareness. This one here. I'm not certain that any image I see really sees, hears, feels, or anything. But I am certain that this awareness is aware, the divine awareness being that is I. I can speak about that and address that only. But it seems, as I listen to the responses and see them and remember my own, that with every memory comes sort of a melody, a feeling, and it's often beyond words. For example, who can describe the Star-Spangled Banner in words right now? You say, well, I can't put it into words, but you give me a piece of paper and I will diagram, I will put the Star-Spangled Banner into notes. Yeah, but can you put the goose pimples into those notes? Can you put the feeling of pride, if you feel it, when you hear the Star-Spangled Banner? You know, I learned a few years ago I shouldn't do all that because being a soldier, maybe I'm kind of like nationalistic or very prideful of country and so forth and so on. But to me, I still tingle when I hear it. And I love to see I stay up sometimes just to see it on television with the fields of grain and all of that sort of thing. But I tingle when I hear the French national anthem. Nothing could be more beautiful than that. It's mine too, you know. And when I listen to the British national anthem. And the other day I really listened for the first time as an American band played the Chinese national anthem, and holy smoke, I thought it was great. It was beautiful. Who can put those tingles into the sheet of music or into words? All right. We've been told that those who know don't speak. That is, those who know the truth don't talk about it. There's a great deal of truth in that statement. We've been told that those who talk about it and say this is it, don't know it, really. And there's a grand degree of truth in that too. The intellect of myself would say, well, why is it that the people who made that remark have spent such a long lifetime making an effort to speak of the truth or to tell it and to explain it? Why did they do it? And I've answered that for myself only in that it seems I can't do otherwise. I can't do otherwise than explain what I live. I'm asked by others, people come, and so it would be rude, would it not, to not make the attempt to answer the question. Others say, how do you feel about thus and such? Would it be honest to not reply? So I reply. I go where I'm asked to go because it seems, well, there appears to be a need. And if I can be helpful, I shall, because I used to do the same thing. Now, in addressing the heart, I've learned that it is possible to talk beyond words. Listen gently. Listen like a child right now. Forget trying to figure out whether this makes sense or not, but just listen. The child of us hears a sound and thrills. It doesn't say, is it a good sound or a bad sound? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? It just listens and thrills. As the child gets older, it listens and hears a sound and says, ghosties, maybe. I wonder what ghosties are. What are they? I went through all these ghost towns and I didn't see a ghost. The child listens, and a feeling accompanies the listening. The feeling is quite beyond words, but the feeling is real. Now, it would appear that feeling, like anything else, it's tangible. And that feeling is tangible because it is included within awareness and is not being all there is to awareness. Therefore, since it isn't all there is to awareness, it would be called finite. It has a beginning and an end. So therefore, because it appears to have a beginning and an end, there can be what we call feelings that are positive and apparent feelings that are negative. They're opposites. All right? And we pointed out this morning in as soft a way as I could, but really in a very brutal way, that our anguish is often meant to teach us what joy is all about. Our sense of the dark night of the soul is the means by which we can see what light is. And our wonderment, our feelings of inadequacy, our sense of separation, or our feeling of being rejected are all to point out what wholeness is. Well, now, how can you teach beyond words? It seems that I've been shown this, been given this. I try to be as honest and faithful with it as I can. I want to here use this little gizmo as an illustration, and those of you bear with me that have heard this 1,000 times before, but if you walk up to a piano and you strike one note, we've got to improve this, Rachel. You strike one note, and the stories I told this morning, each were a note. Each of those stories, I hoped, were intellectually honest and had all of the reason and logic necessary to support the story, so that the intellect would say A plus B equals C. He's talking about C. He's told us A. He's told us B. Therefore, it makes sense, and the intellect doesn't argue. All right. But along with the story comes an overtone of feeling that is often an accumulation of a lot of memories, a lot of experiences, and everything else, but often comes another feeling. Sometimes it'll bring anguish. Sometimes it brings pain or a tear or a great sense of relief, but it's an overtone. Okay? Now, when I told another story, it was like that. Another note. A finite story that has a beginning and an end. But with that story also comes an overtone of its own. But now, we live, when we are concerned with tangibility and words, we are therefore concerned with sequence. The first word of a sentence is before the second word, and the first note of a symphony is before the end. And therefore, we're talking about sequence, and we're in an arena called time, because what is time but the measure of distance between things? So I tell one story, which is like so, and then somewhere along later on is another story, like so, each with their accompanying overtones. But tell me, all you musicians, when you put the two notes together, what happened? Any of you who have played the piano know that when you strike two notes together, you hear their harmony. You hear the overtone. So while each note appears to be separate, each note has an essence of its own. Each note, hopefully, is reasonable and logical and makes sense. There is another overtone that those notes sound that is heard by the heart of us. If it happened to be on a piano, you actually hear the tangible music. Now, the overtone is strictly one's own. I made no words to announce that overtone. I restricted it in no way. The overtone is immaculate. The overtone is pristine. Now, here's what I've learned. I've learned how to make overtones. We all do it intuitively. Perhaps not consciously. For years and years and years as a writer, I wrote and didn't realize what I was doing. In the process of living, I didn't realize, but in the process of teaching or explaining ideas to soldiers or others, I found that I was making overtones, but I was making them, but unconsciously. Now, when you read Charles Dickens, a master of overtone, his bombastic chapters are preceded by a chapter of immense smoothness and quietness, softness, gentleness. And so the bombacity of the second chapter sounds twice as loud. But the overtone is what's the word? Is exponential. It's greater still. When one is getting ready to make a point firmly at a business meeting, and the salesmen are there and the other business people are there, and he wants to make the point, he might find himself banging the table in the process of making the point. He's adding to his words. I know that in the process of writing the melody, I wasn't aware at the time how softness preceded the loudness and roundness preceded the straightness, and how the various parts of things were counterposed or poised one against the other to accentuate and to make clear. Well, as I began telling stories, and the only stories I can tell are the honest ones I've lived, and I only told them because it seemed people wanted to hear them, and because they too had seen that they could go and do likewise, and that it was possible, and that it wasn't a dream world, a metaphysical goal that was unattainable, but was something that was immediately attainable, because if I could reach it, most surely anyone could. And others lived it and saw it was so, and so the word spread and the stories were told, and I began to find that, well, after all, this experience would be tangible, or a finite experience, because it just has so many things that have happened. Very full. I don't know anyone who has done any more than this body has, had any more experiences than this body has, gone any more places, studied with any more teachers, nor sat at the feet of more enlightened than this had, or sat at the feet of fools, whatever might be the case, or seem to be the label attached. I don't know of anything that's had any more anguish or any more joy than this body had. But now bear in mind, I am not this body. Awareness is who what they can do, what they do. I know, for instance, that certain stories and the overtone it produces when mixed with one's very emotions at the moment can produce an immediate seeing of what I'm saying. That's an immediate thing. Others would appear to not be immediate at all, but await maybe a moment of anguish or a moment of anger or a moment of frustration. But when that comes, then the story or the story's overtone is remembered. And listen, is there any more honest way, really, to teach or to make a point? If I simply tell someone what to do, oh, how foolish I found that to be. How vainglorious, as if I know something to do that you should do. Oh, and I belabored that point for a lot of years. Sort of like telling a leaf that you see falling off a tree, and there's a trail down below. It's like telling that leaf which side of the trail to fall on. That's bad over there, son. Don't go that way because that's ridiculous. Fall on that side, son, because there is a life of intelligence and joy and ease. And wouldn't it be stupid to stand out in the woods and tell the leaves which side to fall on? But I have learned that when one, and furthermore, in teaching in such a manner, and 99% of all metaphysical instruction is done in such a manner, actually, when you get right down to it, but it still leaves one basic area untouched, and that is one knowing beyond doubt, a knowledge of an idea that is not just vicarious knowledge. For example, I can tell someone, well, I've been driving an automobile a lot of years, and when the pavement gets wet, down here in the South, where everybody's cars are not adjusted very well anyway, and it hadn't rained in a long time, the pavement gets wet. So when you come to a curve, son, please slow down, because otherwise your rear end will slip out from under you, and you will be over there in the 7th row of cotton or corn or something, and your car will be smashed up. I can say that. And he can say, well, how do you know that? And I can say, because I've lived it. I've lived it. I found out that if I go around the corner too fast, I will have an accident, and so you do not have to suffer the anguish I did. And so you listen to the wisdom I am, because it has at least chronological wisdom connected with it, and so you don't have to have the same thing. And if you listen and believe, you don't have to have such an accident. Well, that's good. That's true. That's fine. And of course, all intellectual instruction is based on that. And we can listen to it and we can believe it, provided we're listening to someone we can believe. And know we can. But it leaves unanswered this matter in the matter of omniscience, this thing of knowing that there is one life, and then being the one life alone, and knowing that with beyond any question of a doubt, beyond belief, and even beyond the leap of faith. All right, I will believe at this point because I have no other alternative, so therefore, God, you're all, I believe you're all, I'm nothing, whatever that means, and you're in charge. Oh, and you take the great leap of faith and you put everything in God's hands. And incidentally, we're required to make such a move as that. And that's what the human experience is. Finally, there's anguish in some quarter that does force an absolute surrender of a sense of personal me, if by chance it happens to be no more than age itself, in what appear to be the declining years, and finally the crutches, and then finally the stroke, and then finally a bed, and finally an inability to talk at all, and finally an inability to do anything. Finally there's a surrender if that should be it. But that's not necessary. It doesn't have to be that way. Well, when by the use of overtones, I've learned that I can make just a few notes. And I one time sat down and I said, how many are the notes that I know? And I know. And I have looked and examined and watched and seen, and this is the tangible consequences of this story and this story, or this group of stories, or this kind of a presentation and that kind of a second hour or third hour. What do I really know? And I found out there were only 7. Just 7. And one day at Woodsong, I said to a very lovely lady who was there with her husband, I said, you know, I don't know why, but I can make 7 overtones. And with the grandest sweet smile, the lady said, there are only 7 notes. All the symphonies are written with those 7 notes. And I've been eternally grateful for that kind reminder. All right, this morning I used overtone. The consequences, the effects of those overtones are really devastating because I laid bare a personal sense of self. And I did it all while addressing the intellect. Every bit. I found that every one of these presentations I do address the intellect. Because I found out that in this tangible arena of people, places, and things, where intellectualism reigns supreme, is the prince of this world, where everything must be reasonable and logical, else it's not accepted at all. I found out I better make it as intellectually honest and straight as I can, and it must be properly supported. Else the philosophies, schools, the philosophers or the theologians are on me like a June bug. All right, now this morning I did lay bare a personal sense of self in the process of addressing the intellect. I would like this afternoon, before all the questions that I hope you'll have, I would like to make a few statements about the heart of us. Where is the intellect and where is the heart? Well, and what is the heart? The heart of us, I guess, is that I don't know how to put it into words. All I can do is make a stab at it. Like I don't know how to put truth or spirit or God, any of those terms into words that are precise. Just make a stab at it. But the heart, as I refer to the heart, I have reference to that in us that is intuitive, that is childlike, that is inordinately honest, and is forever there, but always seeming to fight a battle with the intellect. It would appear that the two are opposed, one to the other, but they're not. They're not. For a very long time, I didn't know really what right was or what wrong was. Therefore, I had to trust some aspect of myself, and I would trust and go to the very brightest mirror of myself I could find. For many years, they were books. And later, they were teachers, people, so I could pose the question as you've just done. But I had already made the determination before I would ever see a teacher. In fact, for many, many years, I wouldn't go. I just wouldn't. Because I'd say, why should I allow the physical image to interpose itself between what I've just read? I'm enjoying what I'm reading. That reading is grand. It's been inspiring and enlightening. Now, if I go and see gray hair or no hair or wrinkles or stooped shoulders or something, why have all that between the joy that I saw there? And so I wouldn't go see the personal teacher. As a matter of fact, Lillian Waters, a very lovely lady, once told me not to come. She said, you've seen grand beauty in my work. Your whole experience seems to be new and alive and vibrant. And she says, now why do you insist on coming up here? And I said, because I want to talk to you face to face. And she said, you found me in my books and that's enough for the time. And I never saw her, I never went. Other teachers I went to. And no one ever asked to come to see me. The first time you're bound to get a no for an answer, or you'll be ignored. Not because I am being ugly or arrogant or anything else, but I've learned that the initial enthusiasm needs to be tempered, and I can't talk as tangibility goes to a world of billions of people. So in any event, the sincere finally get there. Those that are really hungering and thirsting, and the way is made, because I made my own way, it would seem, and I know no other way to operate except as my own experience, and I can only answer your question through my own. For many years, I didn't know what was right or wrong, and I finally, when I found somebody I thought I could trust, and I thought was honest, and I thought was really leveling, and wasn't on an ego trip, and didn't have any personal axe to grind, and wasn't trying to make a living because of people coming to see him, or because he was selling a bunch of tapes, or selling a lot of books, and he had nothing. It appeared that a total enigma to me, and that was sort of a criterion for me. Then, okay, I would put my trust there. And I lived what he said. If he said that was good, I would accept that as good. And if he said something was bad, and yet it was a cherished good for me, I finally forced myself. I said, all right, if he says that's bad, I won't do it. For a long time, it was that sort of a determination. I don't know at what point you feel yourself at the moment, but then as time went on with me, as I began to speak of good as all, that there is nothing but good, that if God is all, what is this evil the world is talking about? And I began to view differently. Instead of viewing from the bottom of the grand pyramid, looking up towards the apex of it, along a line of thought, I started as a point in time and space. And then I looked along a line of thought to the apex of the pyramid, which I was told was part of a vast plane, an infinite plane, which in turn was a part of a grand infinite sphere. I quit doing all that. And somehow or other, in the declaration that God is all, and frankly, freely, honestly, I admitted that on faith at first. It didn't seem that God was all. It seemed like there was God and an awful lot of stupidity around, God and an awful lot of war around, God and an awful lot of false trips around, drugs and everything else. But I was forced finally in anguish and my own personal desperation and grand natural anguish, absolutely part of the scene, though I didn't know it at the time, and part of the plan. I began to say, okay, God is all. Then what's bad? What's bad? All right, for a time. This was a grand and freeing concept, and I must say that it seemed a time for license. I found myself professing an awful lot of stuff that I didn't really know about, but using the conjecture of the top-down idea that God is all, I heard myself saying, well, there isn't anything else but God, and so there isn't any evil, and I was, while cars were smashing up along sides of the roads and men were falling in rows in front of me and all of that, I was saying, this isn't really going on at all, it's a dream. But then finally intellectual honesty or heart honesty or whatever would say, but all right, a dream. Why the dream? Is it a good dream or is it a bad dream? What is the dream and why a dream if God is all? Okay, now truncate all that. Finally, and it happens for all of us, there is a voice within us saying, which is the way, walk ye in it. To those who say God is all, in absolute trust, and most often, at least certainly for myself, that trust was born out of desperation. So I said, I have no alternative. I've tried to climb I've tried to get there every other way. All right, God is all. And this life is God's responsibility. From that moment on, there was a voice behind me saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. Now, granted, that's no answer. What do you mean a voice? Did you hear something? No. There was a grand sense of equanimity, joy, release. The very moment I said, all right, the me sense is a fiction, but it is a necessary fiction that allows the genuine identity to be perceived and understood and known fully, without a doubt. So therefore, thank you, me sense, for making identity clear. And identity, this awareness, is God or mind's functioning, going on. Awareness, after all, is the activity of mind. Therefore, when I did that now, when I did it, there was a sense of the air suddenly is very light. I can breathe again. It came as a gentle joy, just a gentle sense of joy. No great big bodacious blinding road to Damascus experience. It may be in the Bible as Paul's experience, but it's a lot of baloney. It doesn't come that way necessarily. Enlightenment can come as the softest, most joyful thing. And as a matter of fact, that, for me, is how it began. And I didn't even recognize it for the longest time. The gentle joys, they were too simple. They weren't big enough. They weren't like I had heard all the grand teachers say, a great body of light. I'm blind. I don't see materiality at all. Why, there's no matter for life to be in or for substance to be in. It wasn't that way. It was a sense of gentle joy for the lightest moment. And as I say, I didn't recognize it for the longest time. But now, that gentle joy has been with me for years and years and years.